fucking right to the early morning. No, this ain't no love song. It's gonna be the soundtrack. Baby, you gon' fall back. That's the way we get.
What is going on YouTube? It is Cop360 here and welcome to the Road to PC episode 2. Last episode I talked about CPUs. I just went over it, so if you look, it should be on the side of this video. There should be a link that goes straight to that video and you can learn about that. But anyway, here we're talking about motherboards. Now firstly, before I get into AMD and Intel motherboards, I'm going to start off by saying I personally recommend motherboards from Gigabyte and Asus, especially on the AMD side. The Gigabyte's boards and Asus's boards have really good build quality, and with AMD especially, their CPUs run really hot. So if you're on the AMD side, go for a Gigabyte or Asus motherboard. It doesn't really matter on the Intel side because their CPUs are much cooler, so you won't have issues with boards like burning up and stuff. But anyway, when you're thinking of buying a motherboard, you need to consider many different facets. One, like how much RAM can the board support. If you need like 32 gigs of RAM, you need to make sure you get a board that will support 32 gigs of RAM. How much PCI Express bandwidth do you have? Do you want to run SLI? If you do, you need a board that's got enough bandwidth to give the graphics cards enough power. So that would mean you'd have to get a higher chipset board like Z87 on the Intel side, or AM3, no, 990X or 990FX or A88X on the AMD side. I completely forgot about those chipsets. So yeah, to think about that, you got to think about how many SATA ports you need, how many hard drives and optical drives are you going to be having. If you're going to be having 4 hard drives, an SSD, and then like an optical drive, you're going to need at least 6 SATA ports. And for the SSD, you want it to be running at full speed, so you need to make sure you have high speed SATA ports. These are all considerations that need to go in when deciding what motherboard you have. Now I'm warning right now, this video will take a long time. So let's just get straight into it, and it's probably going to take me a very long time to upload, but anyway. Also, you need to consider how many USB 3 headers you might need. If your case has 2 USB 3 ports, then you need a motherboard with a USB 3 header, so you can actually power those USB ports at full speed and not have to run it at USB 2 speeds. But anyway, I'm now going to split up the video into Intel and AMD. So right now, I'm about to talk about the Intel side of motherboards. Now, I said this in the other video, but Intel have 3 main sockets: LGA 1155, 1150, and 2011. Now, if you don't know what a socket is just like the place you pretty much place the CPU. Now, each CPU matches up with a particular socket. So for example, LGA 1155 is for Sandy Bridge and Ivy Bridge CPUs. If you don't remember from last video, Sandy Bridge is the 2nd generation of Intel Core i3, i5 and i7 CPUs, and Ivy Bridge is the 3rd generation of Intel Core i3, i5 and i7 CPUs. If the CPU, then the 4 alphanumerical number starts with a 2, then it is 2nd generation. If it starts with a 3, then it's 3rd generation. Regardless, both of those like generation of CPUs will go on LGA 1155. So for example, any Core i3, i5 or i7 CPU that you see that starts with a 2 will go on LGA 1155. So if it's, I don't care if it's 2600K or 2500, any of them will go on LGA 1155. Just remember that. And then any Core i3, i5 or i7 CPU that starts with a 3 will also go on LGA 1155. However, there are exceptions. The i7 3820K, i7 3930K, i7 3960X and i7 3970X will all go on a different socket, LGA 2011. So remember, the 3820K, 3930K and 3960X will not go on LGA 1155 like the other ones will. They go on a completely different socket. And now there's LGA 1150. This is for the newest generation the fourth generation of Intel Core i3, i5, and i7 CPUs. They will go on a new socket called LGA 1150. All Intel CPUs that start with a 4, so like 4670K, 4570, they will all go onto LGA 1150, with the exception of the i7 4820K, 4930K and 4960X. See, can you see the pattern there? Those specific numbers will not go onto LGA, the mainstream platform. They will go onto another platform, which I will get into right now. This other platform is called LGA 2011. This is the super high-end, like, workstation, full hexa-core, octa-core. This is just like Intel's high-end CPU platform. So LGA 2011 will host the i7 3820K, the 3930K, sorry, the 3960X, 4960X, 4820 and 4930K. All those CPUs will go onto LGA 2011. The 2011, the number like 2011 or 1150, it means how many pins are on the socket or on the CPU. So yeah, the 2011 has the most powerful CPUs, but they cost a lot of money. So yeah, when you buy your CPU, match it up with the motherboard socket so that it fits properly. So now you might be thinking, what are the advantages and the disadvantages of each socket? Well, LGA 1155 and 1150 are the mainstream platforms, the mainstream sockets. They will host, just the mainstream CPUs. So you won't be seeing like something ridiculously overpowered, not overpowered, but ridiculously powerful on 1155 or 1150. However, you do still see high-end CPUs like the 3770K and the 4770K on those sockets. Now, it doesn't just stop at socket. Another thing you need to consider when buying a motherboard on the Intel side is the chipset. Now, there's a few different chipsets. Just, you guys will need to listen here. Chipsets H81, H87, Z87, H77. Oh, actually no. Let me do this properly. If you're on an LGA 1155, there will be the sockets I can think of on the top of my head. Not the sockets, the chipsets. H77. I think there's H61, and then there's Z77. Now those chipsets will match up to an LGA 1155 board. Now, the only real difference between them is PCI Express bandwidth and SATA ports. Now, H77 or H87, just if it goes like if it starts with a H pretty much, you're gonna have a problem with running SLI or Crossfire, which is having 2 graphics cards or 3 graphics cards or 4 graphics cards. If you choose a H87 chipset or a H77 or H81, your second graphics card will not run at full speed. It will run at like quarter speed. I don't think it necessarily means quarter, but it will run at X4 instead of X16. So that is not good. So if you're buying a H81 or H87 or H77 chipset board, don't run Crossfire or SLI on it. However, if you buy a board which uses the Z77 or Z87 chipset, then you're all good to go for SLI and Crossfire, because the second PCI Express slot and the third and the fourth will run at a higher speed. Now, the more advanced the chipset is, the more graphics cards you can put in, and the more like SATA ports and or USB 3. I'm not going to really get into detail on that, but that's the main difference between the chipsets. So yeah, if you get to X79 or LGA 2011, X79 chipset has like so much PCI Express bandwidth, it's just ridiculous. So pretty much that is the Intel side for motherboards. Just make sure you find the appropriate socket and you find the appropriate chipset. The chipset will be with like the board on the socket, so you're not buying 2 separate things. So yeah, that's Intel. And man, just that took 9 minutes. I'm thinking of just ending it here so I can do the AMD one in a separate video, which I'm gonna do. So thanks for watching, guys. I'll probably just have like a little conclusion thing right now, so to summarize it. So anyway, thank you for watching, and I'll see you later. Next episode is part 2.5, and that is AMD's side of motherboards. Thank you, and goodbye.